Good morning, and thank you, Liz, for that wonderfully creative music for our service today, which is about creativity as a form of spirituality. Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende, where we celebrate that we are on the lands, the ancestral lands, of the Otomi, the Nahua, and the Chichimeca peoples. What a rich culture we have as a result of their spiritual influences and their creativity. My name is Robin Loving, and I'll be your service leader today. Before we delve more deeply into creativity, I want to report on our 35th anniversary fundraiser, Gone to the Dogs. You might hear this more than once today because we are really celebrating. We raised about $1,300 just from the people who came and enjoyed all of Tom's fantastic hot dogs. I think there were 8 different kinds. I think it was amazing. And then that total now brings us to $2,500 for 2 events in just 2 weeks. So that's a great start on what we think is going to be a $10,000 win for our fellowship. The other thing, yes. More than that, our silent auction began. And as a result of you donors and your generosity, and you buyers and your generosity, the bids this far are up to $3,225. Yeah. This is the first time we've used this software, and so we're kind of lurching along with that piece, but we're going to get that down pat for you. And so let's do the math. If you make $1,200 at a yard sale, and if you make $1,300 at a great picnic and music, oh my God, the music was fabulous, thanks to Malcolm and his sister, and you add $3,225 to it from the auction, you come up with a total of $5,725 in 2 weeks. If you've not yet signed up for a t-shirt or an event, please do so. I saw people doing so today. Some of our events have been, well, actually, yeah, the first one that had an RSVP necessary was Tom's on Gone to the Dogs on Friday, and it was sold out in advance. So if you're interested, you better sign up soon. Also, sign up for a t-shirt. And let's talk about what else you can do after the service. After the service, our Zoomers are invited to stay online and enjoy our community with a discussion question or 2 or 3 that our wonderful presenter is going to share for us. Then there are going to be those of us here at the Aldea. And of course, we're going to go downstairs. And of course, we're going to have cookies and conversation. And of course, we can also continue to visit with Karen, and she'll actually have her books handy. You will hear in her introduction in a little while, I go on and on about this gal. I have read her most recent book, and it's really, impactful. So as well, at Cookie Coffee Conversation Hour, Diana Keesian, where are you? I want everybody to see Diana. Okay, there's Diana, and Diana will be down there selling raffle tickets for Libros para Todos. Libros para Todos is one of the organizations that we love to support with offerings from you to help people in the campo, especially children, get their hands on books and learn the joy of reading. We'd now like our visitors, whoever you are, to stand to be recognized so that when we're at coffee hour, we can greet you personally. Would you stand as you're willing and able? All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, at least 8. All right, thank you all so much for being with us. It's a delight to see you, and we're looking forward to seeing you more. Also, at this point, we'd love for our Zoom visitors, I'm going to look straight at them, to write your names and where you're from into the chat box in Zoom so that after the service, during the conversation and the discussion, we can greet you personally also. Thank you. Finally, please check your order of service and our website, uufsma.org, to see more events and how to join and all about our previous services. They have been fantastic. They have been world class, and they're on our YouTube channel, a link for which is at our website. And now it's my privilege to invite Betsy Davies and Jim Harper forward, and they're going to give us opening words. They're going to light our chalice, and they're going to introduce our first hymn. Get ready.
and of love, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Let's go. Let's join our voices together in song. Hymn number 360, Here We Have Gathered. I invite you to stand as you're willing and able. Words will appear on the screen after the song for our covenant.
Gathered side by side, circle of kinship, come and step inside. May all who seek here find a kindly word. May all who speak here feel they have been heard. Sing now together this our heart's own song. Here we have gathered, called to celebrate days of our lifetime, matters small and great. We have all ages, know each other's pain. Come and as we can, sing now together this our heart's own song. Life has its battles, sorrows and regret, but in the shadows let us not forget. We who now gather know each other's pain. Kindness can heal us as we give, we gain. Sing now in friendship this our heart's own song.
Thank you, Tom and Liz. And now it's time for our covenant, first in English and then in Spanish with Miguel Angel. We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Tom Rossiello, the minister of the fellowship, and with Jim's help, we are going to enter a very sacred time in our service, a time of sharing significant joys, sorrows, and concerns that this community is experiencing. And if you have a joy, sorrow, or concern that you'd like to have shared in an upcoming service, please email it to me. Also, if you are with us via Zoom, you can type a joy, sorrow, or concern into chat now, and Robin's going to keep an eye on them over there to see if any come up. Before we begin, I want to remind you that if you need pastoral care or the help from our care team, please do not hesitate to contact me or them. We're here for you. So we turn to today's joys, sorrows, and concerns, and as we do, we light a candle for each one, acknowledging that that person or that prayer or that thought is held this morning by all of us. This past Friday was the memorial service for our guest speaker's mother, and this is a candle acknowledging the light of her mom, Susan Kinney, that she brought into the world and which continues to shine, though it be from a distant shore, and also a candle of support and comfort for our speaker, Karen, at this time of loss. Our second candle, offered by many, many of you, is one of hope for the future after the elections in the United States this past week. We're grateful that the elections were safe and peaceful, and that the ideals expressed in our own Unitarian Universalist principles, ideas of justice, equality, inherent worth of every individual, including women and LGBTQ folks, and of course, the use of the democratic process in most cases prevailed. For us, Unitarian Universalism, democracy is a religious principle, and the fight to preserve it is a sacred calling. Also, many of you joined in lighting a candle of joy for another great celebration in our 35th anniversary. You already heard about it from Robin, but more than 60 gathered for a time of true community and fun at the God to the Dogs dinner with great music and the start of our auction. Not only was it financially very successful, but perhaps more importantly, the bonds of this beloved community were strengthened with long time, new and diverse members. Not just our bodies, but also our souls were nourished. Our next candle is for all those in our community who are suffering from mental or physical health challenges. And by lighting this candle, we express our willingness to be there for them as best we can. I'd like to light a candle for Jürgen Aller's back. Jürgen is with us, and I'm actually filling in for him today, but he's having a little back issue, and so I hope he gets a good chiropractor and healed first. And I'd like to light a candle for Paula Peace, who has a birthday this week. I understand it's a big one, so we're sorry that you're turning 50, Paula. Once again, this week we light our blue and gold candle in support of the people of the Ukraine and all those who've died or lost loved ones, or those whose lives have been upended by this unjust and unprovoked war. This past Friday, as many of you pointed out, was Veterans Day in the United States. And so we light a candle in honor of all the veterans among us in our community, and for all who've answered the call to serve their country, and especially for those who were injured or lost their lives in that service. Do we have any from chat?
We do. Please light a candle of joy for all those who voted against, I'm going to use another word, authoritarianism. We don't get political at church.
Right. Our final candle is for all the joys, sorrows, and concerns that are held deep in our hearts but remain unspoken this morning. We're going to enter a time of reflection, meditation, prayer. We're going to do so both with a few words and some silence, and also with a hymn that invites us to do just that as well. As we do, let us hold all those joys, sorrows, and concerns that either were mentioned or were not this morning in our hearts. But let us enter this time with resolve. Resolve to honestly face our own challenges, to share in the love and do our part in growing and strengthening this beloved community, to stand for justice and with the oppressed, and to support, comfort, and assist those who are experiencing difficult times. May we hold that in our heart for just a moment now. May it be so. And may we, seated, continue our meditation and reflection in song. It's hymn number 353, Find a Stillness. The words will appear on the screen momentarily. .352, excuse me. Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit, giving power, I will find true harmony. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit, giving power, I will find true harmony.
Good morning. I'm Michael Murphy. I'm a member of the Social Action Committee, and I'm here today to ask for your help. This year, you gave us the most money we have ever received. This last year, you gave us the most money in support of NGOs in San Miguel. We received $56,500 and have distributed to the NGOs that we vet. Unfortunately, this year, some folks have not yet paid all or some of their pledge. So here we are in November, and we have received only 84% of the money pledged. This leaves us short of our goal for the NGOs and our reserve fund. We do not want to disappoint the NGOs we have been helping, so what can we do? First, a dedicated group of the fellowship has created a series of fundraisers this fall to celebrate our 35th anniversary as a fellowship in San Miguel. Robin has already given you the numbers of the first couple of events, and we're almost at $6,000, which is incredible. Your participation in the upcoming 35 and Thriving events will not only help raise money, but it'll be a great time of fun and fellowship. Secondly, Social Action has decided to expand our opportunities for financial support. We want to engage with the UU fellowships and ministries in the US and Canada. We will introduce each of our visiting ministers to the NGOs here and ask if their congregation would be interested in helping. When Reverend Craig Rubino was our guest minister here last Sunday. Tom's help, we approached him, and we have a commitment from Craig that his fellowship will raise money for Libros para Todos. This outreach to other congregations will be an ongoing effort of social action, and we will be doing it throughout the year. We are also going to send you a brief questionnaire asking if you still have ties to a UU fellowship in the US or Canada, and if you would help connect us with that fellowship. Finally, we're inviting those who have not yet filled their pledge to please do so before November 22nd. What attracted me to UU was your acceptance of everybody. And even if we don't always agree and have the same goals, what I've learned in life is that if we all work together, we will all prosper. We were asking your help. One, support the 35 and Thriving festivities. Help us connect with UU fellowships in the US and Canada, and fulfill your pledge if you haven't done so. Thank you. The offering will now begin and will be gratefully received.
Oh my, I want you to take a breath. You're about to be filled by the words and the spirit of Karen Kinney as she speaks to us about creativity as a form of spirituality. Kind of cleanse your palate here, cleanse your emotional palate so that you've got room for all the energy that is going to be bubbling up inside as a result of learning what she's got to say. Karen's an internationally renowned artist, an author whose work has been celebrated in 2 countries, a social worker, a teacher, and in her teachings has been called to the far-flung places of the world, Mexico and China. Her second book, Doorways to Transformation, contains soulfully warm wisdom meant to awaken us to live life more attentively and intentionally. It reminds us that each of us is creative by nature and guides us into insights to assist us with our own creative growth despite life's inevitable detours. I now invite you to listen and reflect and find out what nurtures your spirit in order to shift your energy from worry to wonder with fresh perspectives. If you want to live more authentically, you will hear from Karen the elements of a formula that may easily be adapted to each individual path to gain clarity and conviction about the connection between creativity and spirituality. You'll find in her presentation things that you may want to explore in meditation if that's part of your spiritual practice, things that will encourage you to reflect on life and your experience to date. Doing so will help you be sure of your inner authority, help you dismantle fears, and help you understand the beauty of interdependence. Like many of us, Karen's an SMA expat who has enjoyed a heightening of her empathy, her connection, and her kindness, which has been nurtured in greater confidence in our little corner of paradise. This has brought her the same peace that it's brought many of us here under the Mexican sun. Listen up, my friends, and you will just might hear enough to make you personally transformed as a result. I present you Karen Kinney.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Robin. I'm really glad to be here with all of you this morning, so thanks so much for having me. And as I know many of you do, I have a background in the arts. I worked as a mixed media artist in Los Angeles for about 12 years, and during that time, I was involved in a lot of gallery exhibits and public art exhibitions. And I've also written 2 books on the topic of creativity and spirituality. So much of what I share today will be taken from those books, and I'll have those with me after at our coffee hour if you'd like to take a look. But before we dive into this whole idea of creativity as a form of spirituality, I'd like to offer a caveat for those of you who don't see the world through a spiritual lens. I'd encourage you to look at this morning as just an invitation to understand a bit more about how many creative people do view the world. And it's oftentimes through a lens that contains a degree of mysticism, intuition, and guidance that often falls outside of a more scientific or linear understanding of life. But with that said, science, and quantum physics in particular, is catching up quite rapidly to the spiritual realm in terms of finding common parallels about how life works, but that's a very different talk for a different day. So I'd like to begin with this quote. "Art, after all, is about rearranging us, creating surprising juxtapositions, emotional openings, startling presences, flight paths to the eternal." And these words are from a book entitled The Art of Possibility. Art truly does shift us. It does rearrange us, and I know we've all experienced this, whether it's in viewing a beautiful painting or watching a powerful film, listening to a stirring piece of music. People's creations really have the ability to leave us transformed. And this is both the power of creativity and also a window into its spiritual nature. Creativity is not separate from our spiritual lives. It's really just another form of spirituality, one that has often existed outside of historical structures of institutionalized religion or more formalized spiritual practices. Creativity contains a degree of fluidity that opens us up to the realm of mysticism. And mysticism is defined by Webster as the spiritual apprehension of knowledge inaccessible to the intellect. Beethoven is quoted as saying, "Music is the mediator between the spiritual and the sensual life. It is a higher revelation than all wisdom and philosophy." And Bach, his predecessor, wrote, "I play the notes as they are written, but it is God who makes the music." I think creativity allows us to experience an act of divinity, whether we have a logical belief in something divine or not. When we create, we act as a conduit for an energy flow that comes from outside of ourselves. And I think many artists know this innately and learn how to tap into something larger than themselves as they create. They allow themselves to be a channel. And this can be defined as something spiritual, the muse, your higher self. There are many interchangeable terms we can use. But I know in my own process, I've often found that spiritual meaning surfaces for me in what I've created, often long after I've finished making it, whether it's a higher truth for my own life or something maybe relevant for the larger world. And the first memory I have of being a public channel for my creative work and seeing it shift something in the outer world was when I rented my first studio space in Los Angeles. This was in a large warehouse building, and the environment in the building was really quite unfriendly, actually. People kept to themselves, no one really acknowledged each other in the hallways, so this wasn't the community-friendly environment that I had been hoping for. And each of the studio spaces had a large sliding door at its entrance, and so we had permission to create something on the outside of our door. And so one day, I decided that I'd like to make a large-scale collage, that was my medium at the time, on the outside of my door. And the shift that occurred while I was in the midst of collaging was really remarkable. People who, the day prior wouldn't have even made eye contact in the hallway began smiling. Some people said hello. Others came up to talk to me, to ask about what I was doing. So the resulting overall shift in the feel and the energy of the building was quite profound. And this was my first time experiencing this kind of energy exchange through something that I was creating. I couldn't quantify it, I couldn't fully understand it, but I could observe it was happening. And I found the creative process is infinitely more liberating and more freeing when it transcends the limits of our intellectual understanding and enters the spiritual plane. This is partly because creative pursuits have the unique ability to open us up to non-dualism, which is really just the ability to be with paradox and mystery. So this is in contrast to dualistic thinking, which is essentially binary, either-or kind of thinking. Author and teacher Richard Rohr describes non-dual thinking as our ability to read reality in a way that is not exclusionary of the part that we don't understand. And creativity is a wonderful tool for introducing us to a non-dual reality and to those things we don't always fully understand. It opens us up to realms of deeper perception and encourages a more fluid way of thinking that introduces us to a world of possibility we might not otherwise consider. When I first began creating art, I lived a few blocks from the ocean, and one of my spiritual practices at the time was to sit and meditate by the ocean. This was a very helpful ritual for me, very grounding and centering, and it helped me to get in touch with what I call God. But when I began to create art, the way my days were scheduled at the time didn't allow for me to do both of these activities. And so I struggled with this tension of feeling like, I should go and meditate by the ocean. This had become my spiritual practice after all and was helpful in my life. But what I really wanted to do was create art. And so I remember one day very clearly, I was in the middle of an art-making session, and I realized that I was experiencing the exact same things as when I sat by the ocean. I was becoming grounded, centered, getting in touch with a higher level of consciousness. And so then I had this aha moment in my spirit that, okay, these practices are producing the exact same thing in me. And so that was an important shift for me in moving my own thinking from this either-or mindset, either I meditate or I create art, to both and, that I can experience both of these activities as the same thing, and I no longer need to have a delineation between them. When you create with the understanding that what you are doing is deeply connected to the spiritual realm, there's a reward and a freedom you experience that I'd like to suggest is very different from experiencing creativity through, say, a commercial lens, or even a more formulaic or rules-based lens, simply because it's a different value system, and it's one that emphasizes our own transformation. And I would say this is a hallmark of a true spiritual path or practice. It's one that contributes to our own transformation, and ideally to the transformation of something in the larger world. And of course, we don't have to be artists to experience this transformation. Creativity applies to all areas of life and is certainly not limited to a formal creative practice. So I just want to affirm and encourage that you can experience this spiritual quality of creativity in whatever project you put your hand to. I'd like to share 3 qualities that are inherent to the creative process that can really help to facilitate our own growth and transformation. And number 1 is releasing agenda. When we create, we have the opportunity to release agenda and to let go of results, or at least to hold them a bit more loosely. And this just means staying open to where an idea might take us. We might have an initial idea of what we want to create or what a project will become, but when we can release agenda, this really allows our creative capacity to expand. And it also helps us to let go of any false sense of urgency that might be driving us or our process. And I don't know about you, but for myself as an American, I find that releasing a false sense of urgency is sometimes a daily practice. Parallel to releasing agenda, creating encourages us to embrace fluidity and embrace a less than defined process for a period of time. The seeds of our creative ideas are quite comfortable being in the unknown and being undefined at their gestation. And so when we give permission for their incubation to occur over a period of time, we become more comfortable dwelling in the unknown. And third, when we are creative, we learn how to more fully trust our intuitive mind. And this is what allows us to be a channel. A spiritual creative practice is a direct path to the intuitive mind and is a very powerful way of knowing. Creating brings us into the flow state. And one of the transformative gifts this offers us is the freedom from the trap of overanalysis. We become more pliable, more trusting, and are more able to allow something to come through us. And as a side note, I would be remiss if I did not mention how blessed we are to be living in Mexico, because it is a culture that does these 3 things well: releasing agenda, being comfortable with the unknown, and embracing intuition. And so we have a cultural teacher at our doorstep who can aid us in our own creative and spiritual blossoming. I'd like to leave you with 5 tools that can help us to integrate our creative and spiritual lives and begin to recognize them as one and the same thing. And the first tool is setting a ritual. So this can be as simple as lighting a candle, listening to an inspiring piece of music. I know for me, it involves making a hot cup of tea before I sit down to write. But the value of rituals is that they provide a sacred container for our work, and they can help open us up to guidance and new inroads. So I'd encourage you to think of a ritual that feels meaningful to you and try incorporating that into your creative endeavors and see how that feels. The second tool is giving ourselves the gift of stillness throughout the busyness of our weeks. The practice of stillness nourishes our souls and directly feeds both our creative and our spiritual lives. And there's no time requirement for this. It can be a few minutes or for a longer period if we choose. But stillness supports our creativity in many ways. It helps to calm all the chattering in our minds so that we can begin to hear inner prompts that we might otherwise be ignoring, and we open up to new perspectives. And stillness also provides an opportunity for us to get in touch with and release any burdens that we might be carrying, subconsciously or otherwise, and enter a more peaceful place from which we can then create. The third tool is setting intentions. So what is your intention with what you create? Is it to impart inspiration, courage, kindness, love, Maybe you're offering the recipient the gift of reflection or curiosity. When we set an intention with what we create, we infuse our creations with that corresponding energy, so then the viewer can receive that as a gift. Contrary to the stereotype of artists creating from their own angst, this idea of creating when we are anchored by a higher intention can result in not only our own experience of inner positivity, but the viewers as well. Number 4 is the discipline of noticing. When we become diligent observers of our lives, we have many opportunities to encounter the sacred in the mundane, or the sacred in our creative work. And one way we do this is by intentionally tuning into the aha moments that we can so easily miss, or that come to us so quietly we don't always pay attention. But our creative work is always trying to speak to us. So the better we can get at listening to it and observing it, the more likely we are to not miss these aha moments or these intuitive revelations of meaning in what we create. This is one way that our higher self or spirit speaks. We look for synchronicities and pay attention to unexpected insights. And then we can explore these unexpected insights and see, what they might be revealing, something about our own lives, or maybe something we can offer to the world at large. And the 5th tool that can help us to integrate our creative and spiritual lives is coming together in community and witnessing one another's growth. And I know this is in alignment with the UU's 3rd principle. Julia Cameron, who's the author of the well-known Artist's Way, writes, quote, "We act as believing mirrors for one another." And so this means finding others who can help mirror back to us our own growth, our own potential, what we're becoming, and we do the same for them. I know for me that finding a community of like-minded people was very pivotal for my own creative development, especially when I was first beginning to identify as an artist and then later down the road as a writer. And so as a spiritual community, I think we have not only the opportunity, but the power and the responsibility to call forth one another's growth. And that can include encouraging one another in our creative expression and using our gifts. So to close, I'd love to share a touching story that illustrates the transcendent power of creativity. And this happened for me when I was in the midst of doing a public mural project in Santa Monica, California, which has a large number of homeless people. And the wall that I was painting on was about a few blocks away from where I lived. And so one morning, I was on my way, walking to begin working, and I found a homeless man sitting underneath my mural. And at first, when I came up, he was very apologetic and quick to get up to move, and I reassured him, you're fine. And so he stayed, and we began a conversation. And he told me that he liked the good energy he felt coming from the mural, and that's why he'd chosen to sit underneath it. And then he went on to talk about all the other public murals in Santa Monica, of which there are many. And he concluded by saying, and now we have this one. And he used the word we to refer to himself and his homeless friends. And so this really touched me and made me proud and pleased that the homeless community felt a sense of ownership of the public murals. And I continued to see him throughout the several weeks that it took me to finish the project. And towards the end of my time, I joked with him that I hoped no one would come up and graffiti the mural once I finished it, as can happen in urban areas. And he looked at me and said, "Oh no, that won't happen. We watch this wall all the time, and anyone getting too close, we shoo them away." And then he asked me if I knew about another mural down on Ocean Park Boulevard, which was about 8 blocks from where I was working. He said to me, "That one has a guard." And I replied, "A guard?" And he said, "Someone sleeps under that mural every night to make sure no one comes up and graffitis it." And this really moved me and made me realize anew that creativity is fundamentally valuable because it touches all of humanity. It liberates both the viewer and the artist alike. one of the great gifts of embracing creativity as a spiritual practice is that it has the potential to bring an entirely new level of meaning to our lives, and it expands us in sometimes surprising and unexpected ways. When we view our creativity as a spiritual expression, we have the opportunity to witness not only our own transformation, but the transformation of those around us. Thank you.
First, thank you, Karen, for your insightful and inspiring message that's fits so well with Unitarian Universalism, as you pointed out. I invite everyone to greet, who's here in the room, to greet Karen downstairs at coffee hour and take a look at her books. I think I'll plan to buy one myself. Thanks to all of you. It's so wonderful to see so many people back, so many guests, new members, and also to have a large crowd on Zoom at the same time. So it's wonderful to have you all here. We hope you'll be back again next week. The service will focus on Thanksgiving with both its complexity, but even more important, its spiritual practice of gratitude that's found in so many different spiritual traditions. And now to, I hope, top off your message, Karen. I think we will sing a hymn that kind of works well with it. It's hymn number 90, 90, From All the Fret and Fever of the Day. The words will appear on the screen, go ahead, Liz. Please be seated, and Betsy and Jim will conclude our service.
We extinguish the flame with the inspirational words of Reverend Tom Shade, Minister Emeritus of the First Unitarian Church in Worcester, Massachusetts. There's a power at work in the universe. It works through human hands, but it was not made by human hands. It is a creative, sustaining, and transforming power. And we can trust that power with our lives and with our ministries. It will sustain us whenever we take a stand on the side of love, whenever we take a stand for peace and justice, whenever we take a risk. Trust in that power. We are together held by that power.